Good afternoon, and welcome to everyone who's come to join us here today for this very special moment here on our new campus. For those of us who knew Peter, Peter joined the math department here at GAMUS back when the school was first forming. He already had a long career as a teacher in Newington. In fact, he told me that he was ready to retire when he was approached and asked to join this school. And coming in, he was one of the leaders, one of the designers of the program, one of the very first teachers we had responsible for the design of the schedule and many of the elements that make our school what it is. During the time I knew him, he was a strong advocate for all learners. Before retiring in 2014, he was recognized as the Teacher of the Year for CREC from the Greater Hartford Academy of Mathematics and Science and the Academy of Aerospace and Engineering. He was a phenomenal educator and a great man. And it is wonderful that the National Honor Society has come to recognize him here today. To do that, I'd like to welcome up the National Honor Society presidents, Ms. Gina DiPasquale and Mr. Kajal Shah. Miss Gina DiPasquale.
Gina had to go.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kajal Shah, and it has been my pleasure serving as one of the presidents for the 2016-17 National Honor Society chapter here at the Academy of Aerospace and Engineering and the Greater Hartford Academy of Mathematics and Science. One of the pillars of the National Honor Society is leadership. When most people hear the word leadership or leader, they're quick to think about the power that comes with the position, but often forget about the teamwork that comes with it as well. As the president, I was able to work hand in hand with all the members of the NHS as well as the school community, and let me tell you, my peers never failed to surprise me with their brilliant ideas and passion for our school. With the support from the staff and each other, the NHS was able to come together to honor Mr. Huybrechts. Unfortunately, I did not have the pleasure of meeting Mr. Huybrechts, but I have heard nothing but great things about him. Mathematics is a beloved subject that holds great significance to me, and I have Mr. Huybrechts to thank for dedicating his time and career to ensure a strong curriculum for my passion to grow. And I know for a fact that I'm one of the many students that possess these feelings. Mr. Huybrechts' mark on this school is everlasting. Thank you.
So welcome. Thank you so much for coming. It's been a few years since we lost Peter, and we've been building up to this moment, and it took this year to have that special group of kids that took on a project to preserve the legacy of Mr. Peter Huybrechts and the work that he did with our kids and impacting the mathematics department in a way that will never be forgotten. So I'm really, really proud of this moment, and I want to say thank you to the committee for making this possible.
Special thanks to Rob. We just want to recognize him and his committee for valuing a legacy that was so fundamental in our school.
At this time, we'd like to invite the committee up.
Good evening, everyone. We gather here today to commemorate the life and legacy of someone very special to us. And I would like to speak from a student's perspective. Mr. Huybrechts joined our school as a mathematics teacher in his founding years. He, together with Mr. Jones, achieved the monumental task of creating our entire mathematics curriculum, a curriculum that is a landmark to this academy. This is a curriculum that includes college mathematics, and it's a curriculum that has trained our math team to win first place in the States. But most importantly, it's a curriculum that has truly inspired our curious minds and our passions for the world of mathematics. What Mr. Huybrechts did a decade ago has impacted generations of students that has come thus far and the generations that will come after. His voice remains with us in our mathematics courses, in our problem sets, in our sudden moments of understanding. Mr. Huybrechts' inspiration transcends beyond the boundaries of time to inspire students like me. He has indirectly provided me the opportunity to discover my passion and scholarship, and for that I must thank him. Today, we would like to solidify our appreciation and love for our amazing teacher. We dedicate this sundial and the symbolism of eternal guidance and direction to Mr. Huybrechts, so that his legacy will become the mantle of achievements for generations to come. One of our projects in our committee was to collect words and memories from his former faculty and former students, and we would like to share with you some of those quotes. But before I do, I'd just like to give a big thank you to everyone that's on our team, because it's really us as a team that made this happen. So the first quote I'd like to share is from Dr. Romney, and she said, "I learned quite a bit from Peter over the years. He was, in truth, a consummate teacher and a great man."
This was written by Mrs. Quinn. Peter was the kind of person who never passed you by in the hallway without saying hello.
This was written by Mrs. Regis. He was a straightforward person who wasn't afraid of speaking his mind, and he loved being a teacher and helping students.
Mr. Armstrong said, "Peter is sorely missed every day among those colleagues who knew him best, but we all take solace in the fact that his spirit is ever present in the classrooms of those who, like me, became who we are as teachers because of his influence." And Mr. Milch would like to say, Mr. Huybrechts was a very patient man. He would help any teacher or student that needed him, providing they were willing to put in the effort needed to succeed.
This is from Dr. Uche. No physical person I know cares as much for people who are not related to him than Peter. He'd always had a listening ear for anyone who had a problem. And now we have quotes from his former students.
This quote is from one of his former students named Jennifer. "What was most unique about him back then was his ability to think outside of the box, before that trait became popular. If you could solve a math problem differently than he had taught, he would take his time to review your technique to be sure that it was bulletproof, and then let you solve it your own way."
This is by former student Desai Kush. He loved not only teaching his students, but he loved his students too. He was the type of teacher that left a smile on your face as you were leaving the class.
This is from former student Ronak Oakley. He is the one teacher who turned my math from my least favorite subject to my favorite subject. I remember that I had to pick up a worksheet from him, and his office was far from where we were. His leg was in really bad shape, yet he was willing to walk to his office and grab the paper despite having trouble walking. It really showed how devoted he was to his students.
And this last quote is from one of his former students, Chris. He said, "I remember him sitting with us in the computer lab as excited about learning something new as we were. He was as happy to learn something from the students as he was to teach us." So that concludes our quotes, and now we think it's a good time to review the sundial. So the sundial is a armillary sphere, and it's a three-dimensional sundial. It's supposed to have an arrow in the center that is an indicator of what time it is based on shadow. We have been having trouble with the arrow because when it came in, it was a defect. It broke immediately, and we're gonna get that fixed. But there's an inscription on the sundial, and if you would like, come up and you can see it. The inscription says, "Peter Huybrechts, forever inspiring through his love for mathematics and his love for teaching."
For those, this really goes to Peter's family and friends. I'm Jim Armstrong. I'm a math teacher here at the school. Peter Huybrechts he was my mentor as a teacher for sure. While I think that this sundial and this sort of memory of Peter, this recognition of Peter is overdue. it's not necessary, and in part for reasons that you've heard us say. It's not necessary because his imprint is here on a daily basis. It's not only in the curriculum and the wonderful materials and the way he guided young teachers like me in teaching math, but in our humor, in the way that the way we view teaching. I have memories, and every time the copier jams, I think of Peter. It's like things like that, and jokes that we used to have, and I can't watch an episode of Seinfeld without, stopping for a minute and thinking about how much we just enjoyed. Literally every Seinfeld reference we went through. So these memories are what keep him alive, and they are, and as I mentioned in my quote before, they are ever present in the classrooms here, and the life, and Peter's life really does carry on in these students and the successes that Rob outlined. And I just would also like to thank NHS and Rob specifically for taking this on, because as I mentioned, it was overdue, and it's wonderful finally to see this come to fruition.
I came with Peter to Greater Hartford Academy of Math and Science, which means we both came at the same time, and feels a bit lonely to be the only one left out of the original group. But I remember the first 2 days the construction wasn't even finished, and we had to start school, and we just had to do it. And I remember all the boxes that came, and Peter was very happy for not having lab equipment at all. But something very special, which is totally different than school and math, I basically could not find basil. I love basil with my food. And I say to Peter, I do not know why, but I can't find basil. It seems like there is no basil anywhere. About 2 days later, and that's the first week of school, 2 days later, Peter comes with about a bunch of basil. I'm not exaggerating, about that much basil. And he says, "Here is basil." And so I made everything this summer and for the next 2 years from Peter's basil.
Hi, I'm Mrs. Penny Kelly, and I just wanted to share with you, I know a lot of you, what he meant to me, and I want to thank you, and I want to thank him for being a part of my life. He's one of the reasons I'm here. He was on my interview committee when I was interviewed, and the answer that he gave me to the one interview question I had was the reason I came here. Peter would always pick on me in the classroom my first few years, and it was all in love. But he made me a better teacher. And I shared a classroom with him for many years where 3 of us shared one classroom. So it was very hard to do math and science, and Dr. Shank also was in the room with us. So he made everything work. Anything science, he said, "You take care of that." I don't know what the big red button is for, and I don't want to. So if anything happened, he made that my responsibility, but he just always lightened the load. So the first time was when I first met him. The second time he changed my life was being a mentor to me in my first classroom here. And the last time was personally being there for me when I needed him. And he just knew. He just knew. So the last time he gave me a hug was one of the most important times in my life. So I want to thank you, and I want to thank him for being a part of my life.
Good afternoon. My name is Matt Milch. I had the pleasure of teaching with Peter Huybrechts for a number of years, and in my first year of teaching especially, we co-taught a class together, and just the amount of mathematics and teaching that I learned from him in that year was much more than all the training that I had before me. And just a lot of wonderful memories of Peter and how giving he was. We had a math office that we were all kind of crammed in one hole, and it was always one of those opportunities. Anytime we had any issue, we were trying to grade something or how to get a student to perform in a certain way, we just turned around to him, and he was sort of like our answer key, just our big teaching answer key, and it was great. And the other nice part is he was always willing to help Dr. Romley and explain the nuances of getting paper into the copier in the correct way from a distance, and some of those things. It was just really nice. So
Creative incompetence.
Creative incompetence was his way of doing anything, where he just didn't want to do it, so he had this other way of making sure it got done, even though he didn't actually have to do it. And this year, I was lucky enough to host our 5th annual Peter Huybrechts retirement party, which was nice. That we just sort of kept that tradition from the first time we had him out there. So I miss him dearly every day, but we see him in the students' faces when we had these slides that he put together with these Google images, which is one of his favorite things on the face of the earth. And we have these weird slides that don't make any sense to the kids, and you'll see that your math teacher just start laughing because we know what Peter meant there, even though we couldn't actually explain it the way Peter would want it. And it's just funny, especially the car that looks like a face, or the dog with the eyeglasses on the back, and those kind of things that Peter would use to just kind of enhance the slides and keep the math lesson going. So thank you, Peter, and thank you for sharing them with us.
Hi, I'm Dwayne Jones. There was a time when I didn't have to introduce myself, but people tell me that since I stopped teaching morning geometry, no one knows who I am anymore. I first met Peter Huybrechts in the spring of 2003. When I applied for a teaching position at the Greater Hartford Academy of Math and Science in the Learning Corridor in Hartford. And I was thinking about the fact that all of the students gathered here never had the chance to have direct experience with him, never got the chance to sit in his classes. And I was wondering what point I could make that would emphasize how much impact he actually had that you still feel every day. And when I first came to work teaching at the academy, I had never taught with a smartboard. In fact, I had never seen a smartboard. Now, my current students probably have trouble imagining that. But when the administration at that time first bought smartboards, the thought was, these will be great for science classes. I don't see how the math department will make any use of them. And all of you know how wrong that is. What you may not know is that that is entirely Peter Huybrechts. It was Peter who saw the smartboard as a new paradigm for delivering mathematics instruction. It was Peter who taught all the rest of us how to use it. And when you go off to college in a year or two, and you find yourself sitting in a math classroom wondering when the professor is going to hand out the printouts of the smart notebooks, he's probably not. And you'll have to adjust. And you can kind of thank Peter Huybrechts for that too. But I think he's right. I think that the smartboard has added a tremendous amount to our school. When you taught something that Peter had taught before, he would always come and offer his smartboard materials, which were always great. If you've taken pre-calculus or calculus, you've seen many of them. But he would always add as a caveat, just do whatever you want with this. You know, if you want to change it, change it. If you want to toss it, toss it. He wanted to make the point that he was not trying to bully you into doing things his way. And that, to me, captures Peter's personality better than anything. Like an awful lot of good mathematicians, he managed to combine and embody in himself a combination of intellect, humor, humility, and generosity. It made him not only a great teacher, but a great person.
Hi, my name is Melissa Hall, and I'm a chemistry teacher, and I started the year after Peter started. And so much of what's been said is just phenomenal. I'm not sure I can add anything that's profound, but he was, toss out a few things, definitely able to think outside the box. Sometimes there wasn't even a box. It just, that was just Peter. He was the early master of the calendar. In fact, we referred to him as the calendar meister. He was, as people have said, always there to give you a hand with something. If you were struggling with a particular class, there was a year where we shared about 20 students in one of the classes that he taught. They were the same 20 students in my AP chemistry. And as we were both getting towards the AP season of May, we would look at the calendar and say, all right, why don't you take all the kids for these 2 days in a row, and I'll take them for these 2 days in a row. He was, you know, it was just like, it didn't matter. We would make it work. One of the funniest things, you know, sort of one of the early funny things, was that one day I'm walking by his classroom, and the kids are all hard at work, and every one of them is wearing what I would call a paper dunce cap. He used to, before the kids would take a test, he would have them make little paper dunce caps. And they came in on the test day, and they all put on their hats, and they wore them the entire test. And honestly, they got so that they wanted everybody doing that, and if there weren't any caps made, they were upset. It became part of his signature test day attire. There are so many stories to tell, but I will stop there. Thank you very much. Thank you for giving us Peter for all those years.
So Peter was the first person I met coming into GAMUS on my very first day there. And coming directly from NASA to GAMUS, Peter met me, and he's like, you know, even though you're from NASA, you still have to prove your worth. I'm like, okay. But Peter throughout the years became a mentor and inspiration to me. We would often sit down together, and we'd be talking about the mathematics of this aeronautic principle and that aeronautics principle. But some of my best memories, besides the copy machine and many other gags we did that I don't know anything about, was the roller coasters at Six Flags. Front car, roller coaster buddy, we would be going riding those front car, the roller coaster over and over and over again, challenging the kids to see if they can keep up with us. Peter is someone I respect and miss dearly, and he will always be treasured in my heart.
Thank you for all of those wonderful words. It brought back, some of those stories brought back the memories again, and I'm really pleased to be here with you to share in that. I miss Peter. Peter was an amazing man, and I loved his keen mind, his lively sense of humor with a little bit of naughty in there sometimes. His adventurous spirit. He'd travel the world. I think he lived his life to the fullest. And so I think he would have no regrets because he lived it so fully. I admire all of those qualities about him. And I am very grateful to have known him. So at this time, would anyone else like to share some words? I invite you to come and look at the sundial, and we have some refreshments behind you with water and lemonade. I hope I can chat with everyone here. Again, thank you everyone who made this day so fantastic. Mr. Brenton, would you like to say some words?
I just want to say thank you again to the many faculty who shared your stories, and to Peter's family who came out today to help us celebrate this moment. I only knew Peter for a brief time, but he was the kindest, most wonderful teacher that I had the chance to work with at that time, and I miss him. I miss him dearly. Thank you to the NHS for the things that you did. At this time, I'd just like to end the ceremony and give people an opportunity to come up and see the sundial. Thank you.
Bye.